Good morning, everyone. This is Dan O'Sullivan with your Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, May 31st. Hey, we're turning into that mid-year section. We've had a bunch of rain coming through the system all over the state of Alabama, just getting plenty of water, a lot of dirty water. Our guys are going to help you kind of figure out how you might be able to put a few fish in the boat no matter what lake you're fishing in our region. We're going to be right back with what Tom, Lee, Gentry, and Tracy have to say. We'll be right back. Last day of the month. Man, we're turning halfway through this year. Man, we've had a lot of rain coming through the system. Lee, what's going on at our lakes right here at home?
Well, you said it now. We've got all the water that we want right now. So you can go up in people's yard and catch them. You can go by the swing sets and catch them.
Yeah,
It's one of those things. We got a lot of water coming in the lakes, a lot of muddy water.
yeah,
One good thing, it's not cold muddy water.
right.
So the fish are kind of getting where they're used to it a little bit. Um, Instead of our frog bite is slowed down a little bit and some of our top water action, and I think it's causing some of these places the fish can't see it. Had to go more to a jig bite's been good, the spinner bait has been pretty good, and a chatter bait. But the key to it is trying to find some of these places that you can get out of this muddy water. You know, our Coosa chain is always typically stained anyway,
Right.
but just finding a little better looking water, get out of some of that main current. You know, when you can get out there and find the eddy spots and some of the breaks, these fish have been battling just fighting that current. So they're trying to get somewhere where they can hold up and not just have to exert a whole lot of energy, you know, sitting out there. Grass bite's been pretty good. They're not in all the grass. You got to look for some of that better grass. Um, and they're scattered. It's just that I think they've got so much in these backwaters and some of these bays to get into. They're just kind of roaming, looking for the bait. If you can find a little bit of a shad spawn in the mornings, that's something that I'll really try to concentrate on. But it's just covering water right now, trying to find where some fish have congregated and want to feed a little bit.
Yeah, and I know crappie bite's going to be super slow because you can't really present stuff to them. I know bass bites, you're going to want to look bright colors. You want to look orange kicker blades on some spinner baits, fire craw and chatter baits, and then dark colors in your flipping baits, right?
Yeah, and you named it right there. I believe they can feel the baits in there, but if they can see them a little bit better, if you can give them a little bit of help, especially with those colored blades you're talking about on the spinner baits, you can in that stained water, the chartreuse, that orange, even a white. It puts off a little different flash that they can kind of zero in on, and I think that is a key that you really need to look for.
And then finding clearer water, especially on Neely Henry, when you're looking the creeks that kind of go back up instead of where the water can flow straight into them and go to the back. Some of those pockets and things where the opening tends to go back upstream when you're entering it probably helps keep that water a little cleaner in there.
It does, especially with them pulling one, two turbines, you know, and they got a little bit more flow coming through. It makes it hard for that stain to back. Like you said, it makes it hard for the stain to back up in them. So look for your angles in some of those creeks that maybe can bend back, like you're talking about.
Leah, appreciate everything, brother. We'll talk to you again next week. Hey, we got Tom Ott joining us. We're going to talk a little bit of Guntersville fishing. Tom, just like everything else around here, plenty of water coming in that system. Water's running dirty, all that kind of stuff. How are you coping with it?
A very good rain suit. Um, it's been it's been tough, Dano. I mean, the fish. The good thing is fish are already wet. It doesn't seem to really be bothering them that much. But it's kind of keeping the water a little cooler, and it seems like it's really holding a lot of fish, and I mean quality fish, holding them up a little bit shallower than typically this time of year. I really like the May and June months. I like that transition to the ledges and to the deeper areas, and it's just really not 100% happened yet. There's definitely schools out there, but you can still catch some really quality fish up in the shallower water. Chatterbaits, topwater buzz baits, frogs, all of those things, because that grass is starting to top out, and in some areas, and there's just still a tremendous amount of bait up there, and a lot of bass still cruising. So it's it's happening a little later, but there's a lot of opportunities. I've seen a lot of schooling activities start to take off. A whole bunch of hybrids, really getting going out there, and they're usually mixed in with bass. So, I mean, if you can get it past the hybrids, you can catch some bass. But that seems to be, it's just more of the same, I guess, but just changing slightly. It really hasn't. We just haven't had those hot days to really heat up that shallow water and push those brim a little deeper. So there's still a lot of brim up there in that 5 to 3 foot, 5 to 2 foot range. A lot of bass feeding on them right now, Dano.
Is that where you want to focus right now with all of that current going through the system? Those ledges are going to be a little bit tougher to hold on. The bass may not be working, they
I
may not be
think
covering the bait quite so well. Is that the best thing to do right now, is look at some of those pockets that got brim in them?
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely the first, because the shad spawn's kind of waned out, but they're really feeding on those brims. So, I mean, that would be my strategy. I would always want to go hit a few deep holes, maybe to catch a kicker fish here or there. I think you need to win a tournament. I think you're going to have to do both, fish a little bit deep and a little bit shallow. But, right now that's kind of been the gist of things for the last month or so, really. I mean, a lot of these bigger tournaments are being won, with, four real good fish up shallow and then a big kicker fish, coming off a ledge or, even a smaller hump or something like that.
Well, I know it's going to take some work to get out there and holding some of that stuff, but thank goodness for spot lock, right?
Amen. Amen. I'm telling you, what would we do without it,
I don't know how we ever did without it. Hey, Tom, thanks for everything, brother. We appreciate everything, and we will talk to you again next week, my friend. Last day of May, we're getting ready. A lot of rain coming through our system, and we know that Coosa River's been running. Tracy, what's the best way for these guys to cope at Logan Martin and Lay Lake these days?
Yeah, like you said, Dana, a lot of rain. Logan Martin, water's out of the banks, over the piers. It would have been a good week not to fish. But if you're going fishing at Logan Martin this week, you know, there's a couple of key points to know. The spinner bait, the vibration, is one of the key baits that I would throw right now at Logan Martin or any of these muddy lakes. But at Logan, if you can kind of try to get into some of those pockets that the water's got just a slight, I'm not even going to say clear, but less mud, where some of that current's pulling the mud out of those pockets and creeks, that's your better options. And when you get in there, the spinner bait's probably, to me, the best option. We actually caught fish in that mud on Tuesday in those pockets, but when it gets muddy like this, those fish want their nose up against something. So we've kind of been targeting the flooded, grass or the pier pilings, but you can still catch some fish, but it's not as fast and furious as normal. But that vibration from the spinner bait and knowing that those fish want their nose up against something during this mud, you put those together, you can catch a few fish, but it's not been a good week for fishing. And usually with current, we like to talk about getting out there on that river and finding those eddies, but it's too much current down there. I did a pretty good drive through that. There's not fish to be caught out there on the river with the amount of current that's coming through from Neely Henry right now. So get off the river, spinnerbait, best option, and throw it at some cover.
I know I've talked to Tommy Biffle a lot in the past, big time flipper from Oklahoma. One of his favorite things to do this time of the year is to obviously flip, but he uses a black and yellow jig, not chartreuse, black and yellow. Are you going dark colors, or are you kind of focusing yourself on lighter, brighter colors?
I've heard people talking about the whites and the oranges and stuff. I tend to go black whenever it gets muddy like that. I like the darker colors down when it gets muddy. I'm not one of those that goes towards the bright chartreuses and oranges. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it works for me. It's my confidence level. Just like at night, whenever they can't see at all, I'm 100% black, hoping that they can see that more of a silhouette instead of a bright color. So I'm definitely using the dark colors.
All right, Lay Lake. We got about 30 seconds. Tell me what's going on there.
Lay's a little bit different layout than Logan, not as much of the river system once you get to that mid to lower end. So you can get away from some of the dirty water there. And with the amount of grass there, some of that water's cleaned up already in the creeks. Tuesday, Wednesday, it started. It's still raining, but it's starting to clean up in the back of some of those creeks and pockets. So swim jigs, spinner baits, crankbaits, shallow stuff. With all the cloud cover we've had, the fish seem to be up there pretty tight up to the bank for whatever reason, feeding on some of the shad, brim, whatever. So the shallower bite's been better than the deeper bite, and you can get a little bit out of the mud at Lay.
Brother, we appreciate everything. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you again next week. Hey, we got Gentry Gordy joining us here. Going to talk a little bit of fishing down there in Lower Alabama, talking Jordan Lake, talking Lake Martin. Every place is a little bit dirty right now. Gentry, where would you go fishing right now between those two spots?
Well, if I can get some rain, I'd go to Martin because it ain't muddy. Well, there's certain sections of Martin that are muddy. But Blue Creek and Mouth of Collage and all that, it never gets muddy. I'm not gonna say it never gets muddy, but this ain't enough rain to get it muddy. The problem is if it's not raining, you really can't get out there this time of year. The boat, if you do, you got to be out of there by lunchtime. But that being said, at Martin, a lot of the shallower docks has got some trash around it. The brim are starting to get around them, and you can find some really good largemouth around those this time of year. But it's not every dock. It's got to be some kind of trash pile or something that'll hold those brim up there. Or if it, getting close to the back of a little cut where they start to bed. The brim beds I've seen, that's kind of what I'm focusing on, especially at Martin, if you want a big bite. The shallower brim beds seem to be holding fish, and the deeper ones, they're just not there yet. I think the water temperature is still a little cool for them to get on those deeper brim beds. So 8 foot and shallower, the brim beds there, those are where your better fish are going to be holding.
How are you fishing those? Is it a time to throw your little ball head jigs? Is it a crankbait bite? What are you thinking?
Man, believe it or Dano, I've caught them, spinnerbait, a little bit heavier spinnerbait with a big gold blade dragging through there. Crankbaits, but man, I have gotten that missile baits, the Aaron's Magic drop shot worm, that purplish pink color on a drop shot. I don't know what it is about these brim beds. I mean, so far it's worked on Martin, Jordan, and Eufaula. So the pink drop shot worm's pretty tough.
A lot of drop shotting going on. Okay, what are we doing at Jordan Lake?
Get in the pockets. I still swimming a jig, throwing a frog and a buzz bait. And the brim beds as well. And a lot's, 2 different lakes, but a lot of it's the same as far as finding those brim beds towards the back of the pocket, shallower water. I usually do that later in the day. First thing in the morning, it's more run and gun, swim jig, top water plug, buzz bait, stuff like that. I was getting some good bites on some bigger crankbaits off some of them deeper points, but if you've had those areas, look at the creek right below it where it's starting to wash into it, and it seems like those fish just kind of transition to the inside of the mouth of those cuts to get out of that current.
Gotcha. Gentry, as always, brother, we appreciate it. We will talk to you again next week. Well, that'll wrap up our Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, May the 31st. Hey, folks, July 4th is just around the corner. We know some of you have been looking at having that special time with your family out there celebrating Independence Day. Come on by and see our sales department. We got Katie, Melissa, and Patrick ready to help you figure out the boat of your dreams. And if you're wanting to keep yours running, go see Misty in the service department, or Pat and everybody in the parts if you're one of those DIY types. And then, of course, don't forget the Loft for all of your sunglasses, apparel, and fishing needs. Will be here, ready to serve you. Thanks for being the best part of Bucks Island.